Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of CPOV Autographs. I, of course, am Matt, aka Stormageddon. If I sound a little hoarse, it's because I'm getting over a cold and I feel like total crap. But I wanted to make sure that we got this week's episode ready to go, and I'm very excited about it. But before we get into this week's episode, I do have one thing to promote. If you are listening to this at the time of release, then this Saturday you can join me as I stream for 4 hours, once again participating in Unofficial Dragon Age Day. It is a Dragon Age Day created by fans for fans to raise money for a different charity every year. This year we were raising money for Able Gamers, and I will be playing a anti-mage run of Dragon Age 2. And if you know anything about Dragon Age 2, you know how heartbreaking that is to say. It's all for a good cause, though, as I'm trying to raise $500 that Saturday. You can donate right now. You don't have to even tune in that day, though I would love to have you tune into my Twitch stream, which is twitch.tv/DJ_Stormageddon. But I will also include a link in the show notes, so you can go donate right now. Every little bit helps. We have a goal of $500, and I'd love to raise $500 by this Saturday. So yeah, if you're listening and you want to donate, please go do that. Enough about that. On to this episode. I'm talking with the incredible rapper Sulfur. Sulfur and I talked back in episode 14 when this was still Crash Chords Autographs, and I'm so excited to bring him back on the newly rebranded show to chat and catch up. It's been a long time. This guy has been a friend through the interwebs for a long time. We have a mutual friend of kHill who writes the theme song you're about to hear. But yes, I'm excited to talk to Sulfur about his brand new record, an homage to the Wheel of Time called The Wheel of Rhyme, and many other awesome things that he's been up to in the 6 or 7 years since we last spoke on the pod. So without further ado, here is my incredible conversation with Sulfur. I'm so excited to be chatting with you again. You're the last time you were on this podcast, it was under a different name. It has now shifted networks, but yes. You were episode number 14. Oh, wow. And you will be episode 184.
Wow. Well, congratulations on all of your success.
Thank you. I appreciate it, buddy. But we last spoke in January of 2015, and that feels like a lifetime ago at this point.
It really does. So much has changed everywhere. Personally,
literally
in the world. Yeah.
For those just tuning in, because as always, I have no idea where I'm going to edit this intro from. I am talking with the incredible nerd rapper Sulfur. Sulfur and I go way back through the incredible kHill, known producer and fellow thought criminal to this man right here.
Yes.
Sulfur, I'm so excited to be chatting with you again. Thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
I want to start by actually an anecdote. So ages ago, you made an EP about the Ninja Turtles, ages and ages ago, and I loved it, listened to it all the time. There was a section in the beginning of one of the tracks. Mind you, I had, at this point, not seen any of the Michael Bay movies, but I loved your album.
Sure.
There's this one track that starts with, the little rap scene that they do, now that I know that they do in the elevator. But at the time, I was like, what the hell is this from? I have no idea what this is from. And then years later, after it was out of theaters, I finally saw both of those Ninja Turtles movies and went, oh shit, that's where this, I just connected something, and everyone's looking at me like, are you all right? What's your deal? And I just wanted to share that story with you, that you introduced me to MC Mikey long before the movies did.
That's amazing. Guaranteed you were the most enthused person at that Michael Bay take of the Ninja Turtles.
Oh, for sure. Easily. So I'm excited to have you on because I've always loved your work, and you have a brand new record out, actually, and it's about the Wheel of Time. It is called The Wheel of Rhyme.
Yes.
And while I admittedly am not a Wheel of Time fan, I'm not super familiar with it. I have listened to the album, and of course it rules. And I want to talk a little bit about, this is not your first foray into doing hyper-specific nerd raps, right?
Sure.
You did an EP about the Turtles, you did an EP about Thor, Odin's son. Still, one of my favorite, the Thor rhymes that you spit on that EP it's ridiculous how good that is. But so you've always been a niche person, and your previous album Rebirth was a kind of more general nerdy rap record, and more of your rebirth as a rapper and finding yourself.
Totally.
What was important about the Wheel of Rhyme? Are you I assume you're a diehard fan of this series, but why this series for your new album?
Couple different reasons. Wonderful question. I have been a Wheel of Time fan for a really long time. But truth be told, I started reading The Wheel of Time when I was younger. So, I wasn't even in high school yet. I was like a middle schooler. Robert Jordan was still alive, still putting out books. I remember Winter's Heart was the book that was on the shelves at the time when I picked it up. And, I got to about book 6. And if you haven't read The Wheel of Time, we're talking 15 books in all. It's huge. And they're massive books, too. So, I got to about book 6, and I never stopped liking it. I just kind of put it down as my time started to dwindle. I was getting a little older. And you know how it is when you really love, like, a book, but if you put it down with any kind of age, same with, like, an RPG game or something, it's just hard to get back to. So in my mind, I was like, I'm always going to go back to that. If you ask me what my favorite fantasy series was, I would still say, hey, The Wheel of Time, even though I hadn't finished it. And then I found out that Robert Jordan passed and he never finished the series. And I said, well, and of course it's very sad just right off gate, but selfishly, personally, I was sad because I was like, well, I'm never going to go back to The Wheel of Time now. So I didn't realize another author, Brandon Sanderson, had picked it up and finished it until a few years back. And, when I picked it back up, I didn't even really mean to pick it back up, if I'm being honest. I had signed up for this Audible free trial. Michael Kill was like, you should really listen to this musician's autobiography. And I was like, oh, this is a real easy way. Like, if I sign up for Audible, I get 3 free credits, So I listened to that.
There you go. That's how they get you.
It is, because I'm still a member. But, I listened to that, and I blew through The Hitchhiker's Guide, and both of those were really fast. And so I got to that last free credit. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I want to get my money's worth. I want to get my money's worth out of this totally free credit. And I remembered Eye of the World, the first book of the Wheel of Time series, was it's massive. All of the books are massive. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to listen to this. And I thought that would be it. I just was like, this is a large book, so I'm going to get it. I didn't really think, I'm signing myself up for 15 books, really testing my marriage on the first year I'm married by instantly saying, oh, well, you know what? I'm a fantasy audiobook listener now. This is all I'm going to do, Mo. But
look, if Mo can love you through that, then she can love you through anything.
Absolutely. It's a really positive sign. She's still with me. I've tried to get her into it, but really the times she asked me to put on Wheel of Time was when she's like, I'm trying to sleep. Could you put on your Wheel of Time audiobooks?
Nice.
Maybe she'll get into the show. But, while I was re-listening to it, of course, I have this habit of things that I love. I want to kind of pull them into rap. Rap is kind of like my foundational thing I love. And then things on top of that kind of build. Thor, the Ninja Turtles, love of lockpicking is what led me into Handcuffs and escaping on stage. And so even while I was still reading through it, I was making these jokes about the Wheel of Rhyme. And, we should do this at some point. And a couple years later, I am once again rereading it only about 3 years later, to be honest, about halfway through, but I was taking notes while I was doing it, started writing some of these songs, had already talked to Kill about doing it, so it just really kind of naturally fell into place.
I love that. I mean, I've been a fan of you and Kill for a while, and immediately from the first beat, I'm like, oh, this is a killer. I mean, the folks who want to know what does Michael Kill's music sound like? Well, the theme song to this very show that you listened to before this is also a Michael Kill joint. He wrote it for me.
Nice.
Best money I ever spent. I remember messaging him, and I'm like, dude, I needed, because I was using for the longest time, Malibu Shark Attack, one of their tracks.
Nice.
Which I love them. And I spoke to Tribe. Tribe gave me permission. He's a sweetheart.
He is.
But unfortunately, when I started exporting the show to YouTube doesn't talk to anybody. They just go, up, this is copyrighted. Screw you.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, well, this sucks. And so I reached out to Kel and I was like, look, dude, you play like every instrument and you like every kind of music. And I need a theme for this show. Can you just do something? I gave him literally, I'm the worst to request a commission for a song because I literally gave him nothing. I'm like, here's what the theme was. Here's the show. You've been on it a few times. Make me something. And he came with this great drum and guitar track that I love now that I've used for a long time. And
nice.
From the moment one on this record, Wheel of Rhyme, aptly named, of course. You can't, what else could you name it, right? It had to be that name, right? What else would you call a rap record about the Wheel of Time?
Absolutely.
But his footprints all over it. And you guys have been collaborating for so long. Was he immediately the person you were like, I'm going to work on a new record. I want Kill to back me up again? Was he your first thought?
Oh yeah, he was the first and last. It was the project lived and died by his interest in it, to be honest, because if he didn't want to produce it, it was one of those. It's it kind of feels like a family record almost, It's if you don't want to do this, then I don't know if I want to do this, and that's cool. But he was into it right from the jump. even kind of years back when I was mentioning it. So he had a beat kind of waiting on me already for me just to start writing to it by the time I picked it up. Yeah.
About how long did it take to make the record?
Once I really sat down to make it, it probably, I'd say roughly like 5 months, but it was a escalation too. I hadn't, to be quite honest, I hadn't sat down and really wrote much except guest verses for a while. So, like I said, kHill had that beat waiting on me because we had been talking about it, but I wasn't really sitting down and writing on it. And then one day in the car, I'm just driving down. First song I wrote for the album was Maryland. It was really just a hook popped in my head while I was driving, and I'm just rapping it while driving, stuck in traffic. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to go home and sit down and actually record this, and it was maybe one song the first month, and then 2 songs the next month, and then 4, and then the album's done. So
that's awesome. And like, it's been 6 years since your last record, since Rebirth came out.
Yeah.
Like, have you just had rap just kind of taken a back seat for a while you were working on other stuff, or had you still kind of been tinkering but just weren't ready to like release anything yet?
A little bit of both, but really kind of more towards the first, if I'm being honest. One thing that I guess I'm kind of fortunate of is, I love to rap. I love to perform. I love to put out these things, and I generally am putting out things about, as you can see, things that I also love. But if I'm not feeling inspired and I'm not like in that moment, I'm not in a situation where I have to still grind it out, and put that out. And I think, it's unfair to people I want to listen to it to say, hey, listen to this, that I'm very half-hearted and totally phoned in, so. Yeah.
I mean, also I feel like, and it's pretty common, especially along a lot of artists I've spoken to more recently, like, sometimes you have to strike even when you're not, like, even when the iron's not hot, right? Like, you gotta push yourself. But if you're happy in life with other things and working on other stuff or taking some time to yourself, whatever it is, if you don't feel that drive to kill yourself for it, doesn't feel right? Like, I produce too many podcasts. I produce 9 and I host 4 because I'm a crazy person who hates free time. But, like, I do them all because I want to, right? And when I launch a new project or when I, guest on another thing, it's never, I guess I have to do this. Like, I hit this point with podcasting where I'm like, this is my craft. I've been producing this stuff for a decade. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like I get that sense of honesty from you and kHill whenever I speak to you guys, especially. And I've spoken to a lot of folks in your field.
Yeah.
Just like, you want to enjoy it and you want to do it when it feels right for you. You don't feel this pressure to like, I've got to squeak out a record every year. I've got to get this stuff done. And like, it'd be different, sure, if this was the only way you made money, but of course you have other means. And so you can treat it as this hobby that is your passion nonetheless. And like, I feel like people like consider the word hobby a negative, but I don't think it is. I think a passion and an artistic endeavor can be a hobby, and it can be just as important to you, whether it's your bread and butter making you money or not.
Sure. I think hobby has this connotation to it about maybe how seriously you're taking it or how far you want to pursue it. And, it's not that I don't want to pursue rap to the fullest extent anymore. I definitely do. But I had this conversation with myself some years back, and it was a little after Rebirth. There was a lot of like major life events that happened in my life. One thing, to be honest with you, I've never really talked about this publicly. Private friends all know it. Public, not so much. But the last few months of Rebirth, mainly when it was getting towards the mixing and mastering, a lot of my work was done. But my father was moved into hospice at that time. And, it was a real tough time in life. So I already had, the video for Never Stop Learning ready, in the chamber, ready to go. But there's a reason you didn't see any more videos come out for that album. And there was a push it really deserved that I probably didn't give it, just real talk. Right. I hate to admit it. It's just the truth. But, going through life and, kind of having some changes and some conversations with myself, in my 20s, maybe I wanted to be like a known rapper, famous, that sort of thing. And then once you get to a point where you're, maybe not to be too open, but maybe a little too stoned at, your local Comic-Con, and you have somebody approaching you and you're just not ready to have a conversation with a total stranger. You're like, oh, wait a minute. There's some other sides to this I haven't considered, and I might not be the best candidate for some of this type of stuff. It's just random, maybe too specific example, but, I kind of learned along the way, like I am, I'm down to pursue this to the fullest extent, and I super love it, but at the same time, I'm not trying to have my face on a magazine. I'm not trying to, I'm really content as well, just where I'm at, and I'm lucky enough to have some fans that pick up my music even when they haven't read The Wheel of Time. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's important, and I think what's really great is we live in an age where the niches exist, right?
Yeah.
People can find your stuff, and like, a contemporary of yours, Beefy, I've loved for ages.
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen Beefy live because he doesn't tour. He's got
Sure.
a family. He's got a home life. He's got a day job. Like, and the dude is very open about that. But like, he loves making records.
Yeah.
But touring is just not always in the cards, and especially now with COVID still happening and all of that. But like, I think there's a space for artists like that, especially now between YouTube and Bandcamp and everything else. Like, you don't have to hit that. I respect the hustle of the four horsemen of the nerd apocalypse.
yeah.
Like, I love those gents. And they hustle their asses off. They were on tour the minute it was safe to do it.
Sure.
And I love those gents.
Yeah.
But like, there's also room for folks who don't want to do that and can't do that. And I think it's one's not the right way to do it, right? Like, you do what's best for you with that work. And I think it's really cool. Like, and for me as a Sulfur fan, like, we're both on Mikal Kill's Discord. We're going to drop his name a lot. So y'all should just go listen to my interviews with him too.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. But like, we were chatting on Kill's Discord, and he name dropped you and was like, "Oh yeah, he's got a new album coming out. He should, you folks should chat with him." And I hadn't spoken to you in so long. I was like, "Oh hell yeah!" And like, that was exciting for me as a fan of your work, and I hadn't really heard much from you other than our interactions on Twitter about video games usually. I was really excited to now suddenly have this record of yours that I could listen to, and I have to say, a full stop, even as not a fan of Wheel of Time, this record just slaps from start to finish. I love it. It's great.
Thank you.
Like, I'm sure there are references I don't understand, but I don't care. It's still a good record.
Awesome.
Did you? Clearly you wrote this record from the position of a super fan for this series.
Sure.
Was it important to you though to like not just steep it all in reference and to do make it approachable? I have to imagine that was part of the process, right?
It was, and it really came down to thoughts about like song construction, right? For me, when it comes to like the hooks, those had to be something that could grab everyone, and then the verses are where you're gonna get a lot of specific references and these sorts of things. I wanted to be able to have that appeal. But at the same time, like Michael and I had a conversation. Michael's obviously not just an amazing producer, he's an amazing rapper. It's like, hey man, you want to rap on this? Maybe we should just, leave this for people that's read the books, so you're not on Wikipedia and all of a sudden you have somebody approaching you with a Comic Con when you...
Yeah, right, exactly. Like, Michael, I didn't know you loved The Wheel of Time. The Wheel of what?
Exactly.
But like, I'm really, I mean, like I said, I'm always grateful when referential material is not reliant on understanding the references. Like, I love getting the reference. Everyone likes understanding the reference, but
Sure.
like, I think it shows versatility to the kind of rapper that you are, that you can write a record like this and it still be entertaining, even not knowing the series.
Absolutely. I think that kind of stuff's important, all the way, to take a hop and a leap with it, all the way even to merch, and that's something that Michael and I have talked about. Like, if your shirt that you're making isn't appealing to somebody that's never even heard your music, it's a big misstep, in my eyes. And that goes especially for the music that you're creating there. But I definitely want to start from a place of creating it for everyone, and then also really narrow it down, to the fans of the reference material as well, of which I am very much one. So it can appeal to everyone, really. Hopefully maybe pull you into it. So
Right, make you want to go read The Wheel of Time after having heard The Wheel of Rhyme. Obviously, this is your first record in a long time. Do you feel the juice is flowing now? Do you have other ideas for other records? Are there other things that you want to put out?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hell yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's gonna be good. We already talked about, well, we already established we're talking about Michael K'ill a lot here, but
yeah, right.
we've already talked about some next steps, and I know he's working on some solo material right now as well, which is fire. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, I still get mad at him like at least once a week about how he made a surf rock album that's better than most surf rock albums I've ever heard. I was like, who the hell is this dude? And I've told him this to his face. I was annoyed. I love it. It's a great record, but I was so annoyed. I was like, now I have to love your rap and your surf rock. What are you doing? It's just wild to me. And like, some of the things that I love most about your previous record, Rebirth, and this one, as well as the Thought Criminal stuff, is that it's very easy to steep yourself in just hip hop and just worry about hip hop. But something that's great about both of you is that you both love rock, you both love like folk, you both love you love the gamut of music, and it's absolutely reflected in your work. Is
awesome.
it important to always think outside the box a little bit and not just fall into hip hop tropes?
I think absolutely. Everybody's heard the, I listen to everything except country. I think that's the one you hear the most. But the more, kind of limiting designations you put on yourself that way, the more you're just really shortchanging yourself in the end. Because I guarantee every genre of music, especially now when everything's so blended and varied and you have just the volume that you do, if you dig in, you'll find something that you really do enjoy. And, to kind of limit that in terms of making music as well is just the same misstep, I feel like. So
no, I agree. And I often for years have called bullshit on genres. Like they're words we use to talk about what we like.
Yeah.
And I love that more and more pop records across the board, like Halsey's new record, for example. I don't know if you've heard it, but it's produced by Trent Reznor.
Nice.
And so it sounds like Halsey singing on a Nine Inch Nails record, and that's dope. And for me, I'm a fan of both those genres, so I'm just eating it up.
Sure.
But I can't imagine what her mainstream audience thought of that. They're like, what is this? This is amazing. Because they probably didn't hear any old school Nine Inch Nails, and
Sure.
I'm generalizing, but I love that kind of thing can exist. I grew up in the era of rap rock, folks like Limp Bizkit and Korn and others who kind of early Linkin Park, combined these two things that they're there's no way you can combine that. And now it's people fuse everything. And I think that yes, I've just attached the history of fusing music to rap rock. I'm sorry. But I think it's super important for music that we think in that way. And in a similar way, I know you love video games. There's so many video games now that are not this has to be a platformer. Platformers have to look like this.
Sure.
Especially in the indie scene, there's such a diverse mixing and messing of stuff. One of my favorite franchises, Shovel Knight, is
Nice.
It's Mega Man, DuckTales, it's all these things. And you look at it and go, well, of course this works. I don't know why I didn't see it before, but of course this works.
Absolutely. And person of exquisite taste, by the way, with Shovel Knight. Such a great game.
I mentioned I have a video game podcast called Fun and Games, which I've been meaning to bring you on for a while. But me and my co-host drop that game's name at least once an episode. It's just he introduced me to it. I had never played it, and then I was over his place, and this was, I think, right before the 3D, right before the Switch came out. So I had my 3DS, and I was like, "Oh yeah, Shovel Knight. I heard about this. It was pretty good." He's like, "Well, look, I have the 3DS copy. I haven't really been playing it. Why don't you borrow it and let me know what you think?"
Nice.
So I borrowed it. I played it for 2 hours straight and turned it off. Went, I can't play this anymore. This was right after the Switch came out. I was like, I can't play this anymore. I have to buy my own copy. So I gave it back to Jeff, and then I bought it when the Treasure Trove came on the eShop on Switch. I bought the whole thing, played through all of it. I have the amiibos for all of it.
Nice.
Obsessed with that series. I mean, that soundtrack too is
oh yeah.
I'm a big music nerd, and I'm not sure about you, but when I hear stuff that clearly sounds like it's meant to be on the Super Nintendo but could never be on the Super Nintendo, that shit blows my mind.
Absolutely. And I really love this homage, to some of the games we grew up with. I think Shovel Knight's a really good example of that, all the way down to the details of the level select is really reminiscent of Mario 3 and just all these little things that are just beautifully done. I grew up loving Mega Man, got them tattooed on me, so it's Shovel Knight, I wore it out. I think it was my favorite game that year, the year it came out. Easy. And
absolutely, yeah. And I mean, it's a renaissance now for games too. My game of the year is Metroid Dread without a shadow of a doubt, because I'm a big Metroid nerd, and I never Fusion was my favorite game of all time, or one of, and so to get a direct sequel to a 19-year-old game that I never thought I'd get, it just doesn't get better than that. Have there been any games over the last couple of years that really took your breath away, really blew you in a way that you weren't expecting?
Well, sorry, I knocked over a lock. My desk is covered with locks and picks. Yes, and actually, I don't want to piggyback off what you just said, but Metroid Dread is one of those games.
Yeah.
I might take it a step further. You might be mad at me for this, quite honestly, but I think I'm ready to say Metroid Dread might be the best side-scrolling Metroid, which is obviously the original Metroid that there is. And I've kind of wrestled with myself because I feel like that's a big statement. I really love a lot of Metroid games, but I was trying to put it up next to Super Metroid, which is always kind of the top in my brain, and I'm like, is that nostalgia that's keeping it up there at this point? Because Metroid Dread just it feels perfect, and a really great game. Other games I've played recently I really enjoyed. I think it came out last year, not this year. But I got really into survival games, and Grounded is one I've been playing recently.
Oh, yeah.
They just released a new update, maybe a month or two back, and I had a friend that just got back into it. So I got to start fresh again in Grounded, and that last update almost makes it feel like a new game. It's just so fun. That and 7 Days to Die actually has my top playtime in Steam at this point. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. So we released not that long ago. By the time this airs, it'll be a few weeks old. We did a Metroid Dread retrospective on Funny Games, and during that conversation, and I hadn't even finished the game yet, I was like, I think it might be better than Fusion. And now that I've finished it, I kind of agree. I love Fusion, and I love Super Metroid.
Yeah.
But I played Super Metroid last year, and I streamed it, so people watch this. The platforming in the latter half of that game is awful because you just don't have the tightness of the control that you have in even Fusion and now Dread. And the first thing I said after playing Dread was, this is the best Samus has ever felt to control in any game.
Yeah.
And things like the slide and the counter just feel so natural.
Yeah.
It's funny. We were talking about the 3DS earlier. When Dread got announced, lost my fucking mind. I just went crazy. I was like, I'm getting a new Metroid. And so I was digging for my 3DS, which I found still had half a battery, hadn't turned it on in 5 years, which is perfect. And so I turn it on and I'm like, I couldn't find my charger. I buy a charger on Amazon. I'm like, let me see if I can still buy Samus Returns on the eShop, because the company that's making Dread is made that remake. And I was like, I could. And so I downloaded it. Remake's great. If you haven't played it and you're listening, absolutely play it. Totally. But something ruined me, Sulfur, for that game specifically is the mini map is on the bottom screen the whole time.
You didn't like that?
I did like it.
Got you.
As in, it ruined me for every other Metroid game. Because while I love that in Dread, we have it in the corner constantly. I had the full map underneath me, constantly able to reference, and I'm like, this is cheating. I feel like this is cheating in Metroid.
That was the last game I played on my 3DS, and it had been at least a year since I picked up my 3DS before that came out. But full disclosure, I actually never played the first Metroid before I played Metroid 2. I never played Metroid on Nintendo until, I had a Game Boy. I remember I was on a trip to, I was like a child going to Walt Disney World with my parents. Got lucky enough for that and had a Game Boy along with me. And I don't remember anything about Disney World. I remember playing Metroid the way down on the car ride and the way back, beating it, and I loved it. And so I was really excited when they did that kind of. It almost feels like beyond a remake, because there was additions to it. It almost felt like a fresh game in certain ways. And I picked up my 3DS after it was just thick with dust on top, and it made it feel like there is still a reason to pick it up. And that mini map was a huge part of it. It was such a good move.
Yeah, I mean, with games like Zero Mission and Samus Returns, I feel like there's no reason to go back to the originals. Look, I love the original Metroid. It has its place, but Zero Mission on the Game Boy Advance, to me, feels like a perfect beginner Metroid experience, right?
Yeah.
It sets you up even better than I think Super does. And now secretly I want Mercury Steam to give Super the remake treatment, right? Imagine a counterattack in Super.
Wow.
It would be great.
It would be.
Also, Metroid, I always will tout, is the first horror series. That first game is scary.
Yeah.
Metroid Fusion, going back to it this year, there's some scare. The first time the X parasite shows up dressed as you with them soulless eyes, I'm like, this is scary shit. And I'm a coward, so it doesn't take much. But yeah, no, I share that love of Metroid with you.
That's awesome.
And I mean, I think gaming to me has become so ingrained in my life in a way. I stepped away from it for a while and then came back recently, especially since I've kind of been more involved in the games industry. And I'm just constantly surprised by the new things that will grab me, especially indie titles. I think indie exists in a way that it used to exist in the movies. Now everything's kind of like indie and stuff, and like there's indie aesthetics. But like I like small studio stuff because I feel like they can get away with a lot more.
Sure.
And like Shovel Knight was a great example of that, right? Like no major studio would have released Shovel Knight. They would have been like, nobody's going to play this.
Sure.
Meanwhile, it's one of the highest selling indie games ever made because of the reach it had.
Totally. I agree with that. I mean, these huge budget games, some of them are really fun, right? And some of them are not at all. And these indie games like Shovel Knight come along and show you that you don't need a full team of 200 people working on the best graphics that you can possibly get. It's about how much fun the game is to play. At the end of the day, if the game's not fun to play, I don't care that I can see like the chest hair on a football player. It's just it's not important to me. So
yeah, I want to talk a little bit. Going on off our conversation about technology and gaming, when it comes to the technology of making and writing music, it must be much easier now than when you were first starting out. The accessibility must be through the roof. Has there been like one thing that's really like simplified your process or made things much easier for you to create music?
Absolutely. I would say it's there's a lot of different names you can get to it, but it's conversations like the one we're having right now, right? So, you could get on Google Hangouts, you could get on Discord, or you can get on any of these things. But, it used to be when I first joined the Thought Criminals, for example, we had band practice like once a week. I'm traveling for that. Any additional writing kHill and I were doing for new songs, I'm driving over to his house for that, or vice versa, and that's still awesome and preferable to sit right beside the person. But at the same time, now we still just have writing nights where no friends gets up, and we're still hanging out with each other, even though N80 is halfway across the country, and Tribe 1 is several hours south of us. We could still all hang out, write together. Google Documents, we're writing on the same document, and you can't even do that face to face without piling on top of each other and it being really weird. So
I mean, the accessibility is really awesome. It's funny you mentioned N80. I saw N80 at the last Hacker Convention concert that he did. He's done them a few years in a row.
Yeah.
And one of the more recent ones, I can't remember the name of the hacking convention, but him and kHill did it not that long ago.
Okay.
And he was on stage. I took, photos, put them on my stories on Instagram. I'm a big fan of his, and it was just really funny. And my neighbor, Jay, who's a good friend of mine, he goes, "Oh, how do you know so-and-so?" saying his actual name. And I went, "Who?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, we go way back. We went to school together. We talk all the time. I know him." And I was like, what a fucking small world. Like, what are the odds that my neighbor knows N80? It was just so funny. Like, I love that kind of small world shit can still happen even in our year 2021.
Absolutely. That's incredible. And it's funny you say that, because in my mind I was actively thinking, like, don't say anyone's real name. Don't say
I know, right? Yeah. I mean, like, it's hard sometimes not to. I mean, also, I know for some folks they don't care. Like, I know N80 doesn't care that much, and he goes by his regular name all the time. But it's like, code switching is important. But it's funny to me. You're Sulfur. Like, I think I even at one point knew your real name, but to me, you're Sulfur. That's who you are, right? Like, that's cool. It's just your name, But I want to talk a little bit about writing the lyrics for this record specifically, the Wheel of Rhyme.
Sure.
Was it harder? Like, Rebirth is mostly about you and things you love and like your reemergence into the rap scene, so it's a little more personal. This, you're writing about a thing that exists. Did you find the lyrics were harder to find for this, or was it kind of the same?
It was kind of the same, but there was some extra difficulty in kind of a different way. So Wheel of Time has a really, really connected fan base. And I, through writing this, I was really just starting to gain an understanding of how deep that runs. I hadn't paid attention. I had heard of Jordan Con before, but I hadn't paid attention, to some of the conventions they have, how interconnected they are, let's say on Twitter of Time, which if anybody from Twitter of Time listens, hey, I love y'all. Y'all are awesome. And all the social medias really. But it became this kind of daunting thing because, as you can imagine with fantasy books, there's a whole lot of words that aren't, really let's say, words outside of that world. They're all, you know, they came from the writer's brain. And listening to the audiobooks, I thought like I had a good pronunciation for it. But then when I start digging into the actual fan culture, I see there's these hot debates about how this is pronounced, or, man, it really rankles me when I hear someone say. And so there was just this pressure that I'm like, oh man, I hope I don't say something wrong, or, you know, in the last song on the album, Wash the Spears, you know, I refer to these, what they're really called is Maidens of the Spear, but I refer to them as Shield Maidens because it rhymes with their culture, K'hill, so well. And I'm just waiting on one of those fans to call me on it and say, that's they're Maidens of the Spear. And they would be absolutely right to say that.
Right.
That's just, it just goes with the territory, you know, so.
Right. I mean, you got to let go of some of that nerd. Like, I as of when we're recording, the remakes of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl came out today. I picked up Brilliant Diamond.
Nice.
And, like, about like 3 weeks ago, they announced that they're adding XP share from the beginning. So that way, all the Pokemon will just level up together. You can't turn it off. But, like, that way you don't have to, like, swap them out and all that stuff.
Interesting.
And the nerds were up in arms. They're like, that's not true to the original vision. How dare they do that? And I'm like, y'all are really arguing about accessibility and making something easier for folks. Why? And, like, I feel like that's every nerd community now, is like someone's mad about something. And, like, for me, it's like, someone blew my mind the other day about Pokemon. They're like, Pokemon was always a kid's game. You just got older. That's it. Like, the games didn't get easier. Yeah. You got older. You dumbass, right? Yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, duh. And like, I love the changes they've made. I think that more people, especially after Pokemon Go, like, I have friends who have never played a video game know who Pikachu is and know who Charmander is, and I love that shit. I think that's brilliant. Everyone's like, no, it's just it poisons the culture. Get the fuck out of here. Come on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I make jokes about the Michael Bay Ninja Turtles or whatever earlier, but the truth is, honestly, I kind of don't care. I'm glad they're making movies about the Ninja Turtles. Like, they were my favorite when I was 5 and 6 years old, and there's still movies, and like kids still know who they are. That's awesome, you know, and that's awesome about Pokemon. Like, honestly, them making that change on Pokemon, I would think is more about us who are older with limited time more than it is about kids. You know, when you're a kid, you have that time to grind out those levels, you know, and all that. I don't have that anymore. Which I did.
Definitely not. Yeah. And like the Michael Bay Ninja Turtle movies, while they did a lot of things wrong, I actually genuinely will champion my boy Stephen Amell as Casey Jones.
Absolutely.
I think he did a great job. You know, and also I ironically love Megan Fox. She's been and was in a shitty situation. She made lemonade out of lemons with those movies the best she could just to get back in the limelight. And like, you know, I also like, I'm a vocal and avid fan of the 2 new Venom movies. They are dumb. They are not good, but I love them so much. And I couldn't even really articulate why. And when I watched, I think I saw the first one after it was out of theaters just randomly. And then when the second one hit HBO or whatever, Showtime, I saw it and I was like, well, Stephen Amell's in it and I love Arrow. Let me give it a shot. And I had fun. It wasn't good, but I had fun. Like, and also, I can't remember the actors' names who played Bebop and Rocksteady, but they were pretty funny. They were pretty funny in that movie.
Yes, they were great. One of them's a wrestler, right? Isn't it Sheamus?
Sheamus. Yeah. Sheamus, was Rocksteady, I believe. Yeah. It's just, you know, I think... and I don't know about you, but for me, I got to a certain age where I'm just like, there are things worth getting mad about, and most of this nerd culture shit is not it.
Yeah. No, I agree. You know, on Rebirth, I have that song, Kill's on it, actually, where, you know, talking about it's cool to be a fan and everything. And like, not long after putting that album out, and, you know, I forgot when it was, but, you know, they basically, who is, Rey in Star Wars. I can't think of the actress's name, and now I feel bad about it. But it basically chased her
Daisy
off.
Ridley.
Yes, and they chased her off Instagram and everything, you know, just by being totally shitty towards her. And I was thinking, maybe I shouldn't have put out that song. It's okay to be a fan, you know, like let's dial it back a little, y'all. And yeah, there's certain things to maybe be up in arms about, but so little when it comes to what everybody freaks out about with a lot of things. I don't think a movie always has to be, let's say, Siskel and Ebert good. You know, you don't have to have a critic stamp on it. If you enjoy it, if you like it, I like the first Thor movie and Dark World unapologetically. So
Hell yeah. I still think they wasted Christopher Eccleston as Melkith just because it's Christopher fucking Eccleston.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am with you. I think they're both good movies. I enjoy them. Ragnarok, of course, is the best of them.
Sure.
But I agree. I think they're both good movies. The whole thing where Loki fakes getting killed, like that stuff is great. Yeah,
good.
no, I'm with you there. I think that people feel the sense of ownership over things, right? And when it doesn't meet what they want, like a lot of people have written off Star Wars. They didn't like the new trilogy. They don't like this and that. In the year of our Lord 2021, am getting a Boba Fett TV show.
Nice.
The same kid who owns a Boba Fett action figure grew up loving Boba Fett in the original trilogy.
Yes.
And now I'm getting a TV series. Like, I don't care. Like, I want it. Give it to me. Like, I just, there are things, of course, that bother me or that I didn't like either. And we all have those things we're fans of. But I just think it's okay to not like things. It's not okay to torture the people who do like it and tell them not to like it. Like, that's like, why? There's no reason.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And, I think it's a really good thing to be talking about on the eve of, speaking of the Wheel of Time show coming out on Amazon, these sorts of things. Because, being immersed in that fan community, I've seen all sorts of reactions, really positive, excited reactions, but you also see people, are like, oh, the main character is supposed to be taller than the rest, and he's the same height as all the rest. The show's ruined for me, and people get so caught up on these little details that if they matter to you, okay, that's you, but it doesn't mean the show is ruined, and oh man, I can't.
Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah, it was like when the new She-Ra came out, which I loved, and 60-year-old white men were like, oh, I don't like it. She doesn't look sexy anymore. I'm like, dude, this show wasn't for you. It isn't for you.
Exactly.
Let it go.
Exactly. I think the important thing to remember at the end of the day is the source material still exists. If you're
Correct. It doesn't erase it.
Exactly. If you're like, oh, I don't like the new Star Wars series, so Star Wars is awful now. No, nothing's ruined about Star Wars. You still have your original trilogy. The same way you had that original trilogy, you can just watch that the same way you always have, and that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to shift the conversation a little bit to something that I think we've talked about before, but has really become part of your core personality is lockpicking and escape artism. And how do you come to get interested in that? I felt like one day Sulfur didn't talk about lockpicking, and then one day that's all Sulfur talked about was lockpicking. How did you discover a love for lockpicking and escape artistry?
Blame in 80.
The easiest answer ever.
Yeah, but it's also legit true. How I got into lockpicking, quite honestly, was I got locked out. I was. It really is that simple. But I actually got locked out of a room in a day job that I was supposed to have access to on a day when nobody was in the office. I had this permission to borrow a company truck, right? And I drove 45 minutes to this place, got there, couldn't borrow the company truck because the door was locked, and I was just frustrated about it. The following weekend, I had a little mini tour, where we toured with N80, we toured with, Adam Warrock was still rapping at the time, and him and Tribe and Illbots, and, just knowing that N80 picked locks at the time, I happened to get on, and text him and say, hey, man, I know you pick locks. Would you teach me when we're on this tour? And he was like, sure, yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna teach you. It's gonna be great. And then, the first night of that tour, he approaches me and kind of pulls me aside. He's like, hey, man, I have all these lock picks in my bag that I forgot I put there, but I guess I put them in place of a toothbrush. So I'm gonna teach you how to pick locks, and you owe me a toothbrush kind of thing. But he apparently had been drinking when I texted him, so he's just like, yeah, I got him, just threw him right in his bag. But he taught me how to pick locks, and then before the end of the tour, because that's when the Thought Criminals had a live band still, and before the end of the tour, the whole current live band for the Thought Criminals was picking locks, and when we were in Atlanta, we started teaching other people how to pick locks at that show. So it really just grew from there. I found, oh man, this is something I really enjoy, not just to get in that room when I'm legitimately locked out, but now I'm collecting padlocks, now I'm teaching other people, and it kind of kept building. And as you know, things I love, I bring into rap. And so
Sure.
the only way I could really think of, or the first way I thought of when I ran with was, well, I could maybe break out of handcuffs on stage and try it that way. And so it wasn't this, I want to be an escape artist. It was this, I love lockpicking. How can I bring this into my live show? From breaking out of handcuffs enough on stage, I got to be known for it. And there was a girl named Nicole. It was actually a show over at the Milestone, and she was there. And after the show, we were drinking at the bar, and she said, "Hey, I really like that, picking out of handcuffs thing you did. Have you ever thought about breaking out of a straitjacket?" I was like, no, that has never occurred to me. But the comedian that did the intro, Johnny Millwater, did the intro on Rebirth. He's a local comedian here. He actually tours nationally, does a bunch of like Carnival Cruise Lines and stuff like that. But he started being a magician, and he actually had a legit straitjacket, and I wound up just talking to him after that conversation at the bar, and he's like, well, actually, I have a straitjacket I can't even fit in anymore. Why don't we hang out? And it just went from there. So
That's amazing. I love that. I feel like this is a nerd thing of a certain age, and being born after a certain year, that we can't just do one thing. We could do just one thing. You could just be a rapper. I could just be a podcaster. But I also stream and host and DJ and do all these other things. Like, I feel like we all, like, our brains are wired differently. We just want, like, it's the dopamine, right, of being able to do the thing. Yeah. And, like, we want to find more of those things to do.
Absolutely. And also, why stop at one thing if you don't have to? If you find something else you're passionate about that you love, do it. And if you have something you never tried before but you're maybe interested in, do it. Lockpicking was that thing for me. It looks cool. It always looked awesome to me. But I never really thought to be like, hey, would you teach me how to pick locks? And then once I learned, I was like, oh man, I want to teach everybody that wants to know how to pick locks this. I actually ran a little group in Charlotte. We would meet up and just drink beers and pick locks, and that was it. Start and finish.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love this idea of, like, being able to just share with your community. Like, yes, if a company wants to hire me to produce a podcast, I am going to charge them my full rate. Sure. But, like, if one of my buddies is like, how do I start this thing? Like, I'm kind of interested. Like, I get so much joy out of being like, well, here's the basics. You can do this, this, and that. Like, I love sharing that knowledge, right? You have a song called Never Stop Learning. And it's like this idea that, like, you're never perfect, and you should always be learning new things. Like, I never want someone to ever refer to me as, like, the perfect podcaster or the perfect producer. Like, I'm always learning things. I'm always making mistakes. And I think that idea of just constantly trying to grow and learn is so important. Has there been anything during the pandemic that you've taken on that you didn't really do before? Things that you learned during the pandemic that you were like, this is a new skill. I have a new thing I can do.
Sure. Safe cracking. I'm still working at it. But yeah, I started picking up safe cracking. One of the locksmiths, not locksmiths, but lockpick suppliers that I go to, they put up like a little practice safe at First Sparrows is where it is. And I was like, oh, I never really thought about safe cracking before. That's interesting. I did wind up getting that, but honestly, through doing more research, watching YouTube videos, reading what I could, I'm like, there's much better avenues also to learn safe locks. But yeah, it's in the same vein, but totally different in a whole new world. It's been really fun. So
that's awesome. I'm waiting for the No Friends Ocean's 11 movie to happen, like the cracker, the driver, the whatever. Like, I'm waiting for that movie to happen. It's coming. Y'all are gathering your skills.
It's gonna be like the Thought Criminal song, "All the Coins in Real Life."
Exactly. I've been asking this question a lot on the podcast, and it kind of ties to what we talked about before. Like, the pandemic is still ongoing, and it sucks. Get vaccinated, wear a mask. Please. As long as you can get vaccinated, please. But while it's still ongoing, and it's been going a while, I like to, and it's been tough for a lot of reasons for a lot of different people, I like to ask my guests, what's the one thing, like the one good thing that came out of the pandemic? What's a really good thing that happened to you, or something that couldn't have happened without this time that you've had?
That is a really good thought. I've just spent so much time being miserable about the pandemic. Where is the silver lining, really? I've spent a lot more time at home with my cat. That's the easy answer. I think there's better ones out there, but my cat is really enthused about it, let me tell you. No, I was very, very fortunate, with the day job I worked that I was able to come work from home. So I would say, having the time at home, one of the reasons I got into audiobooks so hard when I did is, I have an hour commute either way. And right now, the past couple months, I actually have been going back in the office or whatever. And I'm realizing, oh man, 8-hour days versus, 10 to 11-hour days getting home, when it's time to start cooking dinner. And it's just, it's wild. So having a lot more time has really opened up a lot of extra avenues for me. A lot of it has not been super productive until, I started working on the Wheel of Rhyme, if I'm being honest. Learning some safe cracking and some things like that, but definitely getting a lot more time with my family, my wife, my cat, and, some friends, but only really starting to kind of get back into that within the last 6 months or so. So vaccination.
Sure, you got to play it safe. My spouse is high risk, so I totally get that.
Gotcha.
I have to go back though and mention cooking dinner. Are you the Are you the chef in your home?
I
Do
am.
you cook dinner?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What's your specialty?
Something really simple, to be honest. But right now, I really make a mean quesadilla. It's like the easiest thing you can make, but it's also my wife's favorite. So it's like the home run. It's just so easy.
Yeah,
but
love an easy home run.
Exactly. It's like, oh man, if you're gonna get pumped about this, wait till you see my grilled cheese, right? But I'm trying to get into more things like I'll just put it out there. We watch a lot of I'll call it trash TV, but I deeply enjoy it. Stuff like MasterChef, like reality competition stuff.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So the more that was the first thing we did over pandemic. Actually, we just watched MasterChef front to back because we'd only watched a few seasons. We're like, well, let's go all the way back. Let's do this. And
do the whole thing.
We did the whole thing, and that definitely made me like, okay, I need to do more than quesadillas. So I've been working on trying to make pasta dough, and really kind of dig into it, that sort of thing. Maybe I'll get a souffle under my belt one day, but we'll see.
That's awesome. So now I want to know, when are we going to get the Sulfur Master Chef cooking record, where you just rap recipes or something?
I never thought about it until this moment, but now that might be a thing that happens.
Look, all I want is a tiny credit in the liner notes. That's all I need. The rest, it's all yours.
If it happens, you absolutely get a shout out. It's going to be
hell yeah,
large font there. So
there we go.
There is that old Buck 65 song about food, and it's strangely, out of this catalog of amazing songs, still one of my favorite songs from Buck 65. So that's a thought.
Amazing.
Now. Yeah.
I feel like if I don't ask the rapper musician about music before you go, people will kill me.
Okay.
So I'm curious what kind of stuff you've been listening to lately. Any new albums you've discovered? Any new artists you've really been digging lately, or old artists with new work?
What have I been listening to lately? The new Chesky just came out. I feel like that's it's not just an easy answer to go to. It's legit what I've been listening to about the past week. And that's really, really good. He's one of my favorite rappers, which is why I really enjoy this album that's mainly just folk punk from him. But
nice.
Anyone who's listened to Chesky Ramos, he's very, very versatile, and that's most of his albums anyway. Is very, speaking of blended genres, he's a connoisseur of that. This, instead of being like a rap album with something a little more, like a little blend of folk punk in there, it's a folk punk album with maybe the slightest blend of a little hip hop in there. Wonderful album. Some other stuff I've been listening to, I'm not sure. Listened to the new Nas for a long time, but recently kind of moved off of that. I don't know. I liked the one of the more recent Aesop Rock albums, not the one that just came out, but the Spirit World Field Guide.
Yes.
I got really into that album as well. So, and that's kind of dated at this point, but I'm still listening to it, to be honest. So
it's fine. You don't have to listen to the latest release. It's okay.
I want to listen to the thing that's coming out tomorrow. That's the only way it happens. So,
right, obviously.
Yeah.
I think my last question is, you've done a lot of nerdy records, you've done a lot of nerdy work. Is there a video game, comic book character, movie, TV show, book series that you really want to do something with that you haven't yet? Like, is there something that's always kind of been at the back of your mind? Like, I'm going to do something with this. I just don't know what yet.
Well, now it's Gordon Ramsay after you just said
Obviously.
that.
I got it. The Gordon Ramsay record. The Hell's Kitchen record.
Exactly. I hate to say I don't think there is, but the reason that nothing is really popping in my brain is usually once it's in my brain, I do it, and the most recent thing that was Wheel of Time, and I just put that out. And so at this point, I'm still thinking about what are some things I can do for that Wheel of Rhyme album. But I'm sure something will definitely come to me, and it's probably not the only or the last completely fan-centered project you hear from me, I know. So
I mean, and I totally get that. It's kind of like, it's hard to know what you want to be next when you're also focused on what just happened. I mean, this record just came out in October, and you want to give it the support, especially since what we talked about before, and that you didn't give Rebirth the kind of support you wanted to. Like, you want to make sure you follow through with this record.
Sure.
So I assume you've got like video ideas in the making and things like that.
I am working on some of those, absolutely. Some as we speak, and some, it's almost a little tough because there's not a lot of visual things out there for it yet, right? So unless I want to dress in cosplay and go out there and actually look like the cover of the record looks, I don't really know how to approach it from a visual aspect. But one of the ideas that I have started working on, I'm not very far in it because I never tried this before, but the song on the album Form and Flow, since you never read the series, it might, the verse lyrics might sound a little weird. And it's because in The Wheel of Time, the way Robert Jordan writes sword combat is he talks about different forms of sword styles. And he's like, he went from, parting the silk into, the heron rushes through the weeds and all of this. And that's kind of how he describes them. And so that's really what that song is. It's like this big blend of as many of his sword forms as I could fit into the song. And as such, what I have started trying to do is work on my first Beat Saber level I've ever made.
Nice.
Yeah, I just kind of want to keep drilling down on the most specific things until only one person says, "That's my shit." But it will be for that one person. But yeah, I want to get that out there, and maybe I'll do like a video of myself failing on the level I make or something like that.
Amazing. Amazing. I love that. That's super cool.
Absolutely.
Sulfur, I'm really so glad that we got to connect again. I've been a fan of your work for such a long time, and I hope that you find success with Wheel of Rhyme and people please go check out Rebirth if you're already listening to Wheel of Rhyme. That is also a top tier, excellent rap record. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll have to do this again, not once every 6 years. Like we can do it a little more often, I feel like.
Yeah, that would be excellent because it's been really good to talk with you, and thank you so much for having me on.
The last thing I'll have you do is we have a saying on the show that you did, 6 years ago, so I'll remind you.
Okay.
But we talk about, I have this saying called music is life and life is good. It's this idea that as long as you're creating, even when life is at its worst, you can still find joy in creating. So if you could sign us off by saying music is life and life is good, we'll wrap the show.
You got it. Music is life and life is good.
That's it for this episode of CPOV Autographs. Our theme music is by kHill. Our logo was designed by Case Aiken and Joey Amons. If you liked the show, please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great way to help us reach more listeners. Questions, comments, or guest recommendations? Email mr.matt.storm@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at CPOV Autographs. Thank you so much for listening.
Hey there, Screen Beans. Have you heard about Screen Snark?
Rachel, this is an ad break. They aren't screen beans until they listen to the show.
Fine. Potential Screen Beans. You like movies and TV shows, right?
I mean, who doesn't? Screen Snark is a casual conversation about the movies and television shows that are shaping us as we live our everyday lives.
That's right, Matt. We have a chat with at least one incredible guest every episode, hailing from all walks. We've interviewed chefs,
writers, costumers, musicians,
yoga teachers, comedians, burlesque dancers,
folks in the film and TV industry,
and more.
We'd be delighted for you to join us every other Monday on the Certain POV Podcast Network.
Or wherever you get your podcasts, fresh and tasty off the presses.
What? That's not...
Can I call them Screen Beans now?
Fine.
Screen Beans!
So tune in and we'll see you at the movies or on a couch somewhere.
'Cause you're all screen beans now.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.